science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
For newcomers and old-timers alike, the Chloe Sanctuary hopes to give you insight into the health and happiness of your companion parrots. We hope to help you build happy homes using reliable and proven tools. The best homes are built on a rock-solid foundation. And the best foundation for a happy home is the bedrock of science. When we stand on the shoulders of giants, the scientists who have worked long and diligently to understand our companions, we can reach new heights of understanding. And understanding is the key to success. What does avian veterinary medicine have to tell us about our feathered friends? How can we prevent illness, see the signs of disease before it's too late, and care for our birds through ill health? What light does behavioral science shed on their nature, needs, and hopes? How can the tools of behavior shaping make our homes happier for us and our companions? How can we deal with biting, screaming, or other misbehavior? What is it like to live among parrots? Let them roam around about you and share a life with them. How much freedom do you give them? What happens if you form a bond of trust with them? Watch and see what understanding their true nature can do for you. Come with us on a journey as we do more than examine a parrot's world. We live in it. Make some popcorn and bring in a few wood blocks. Let everyone have something to chew and a comfortable place to perch. Cockatoo is a presentation of the Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.
Hi, Cecil bird, what are you doing? Hello, Cecil. Hello, Cecil. What's going on, cutie? What you doing? Good bird. Good bird. Hi, and welcome to Cockatoo, Cockatoos with Attitude, episode 37, Cagey with Cages. This is all about cages. One of our fans asked about cages, and it seemed like a good thing to go through. So we're going to kind of go over some of the details about cages, how to choose them, how to choose new ones, how to make a choice about older ones, that kind of thing. So, right? We just had a major flood. Hi, Peach. Did you agree? We just had a major flood, so it flooded out part of the way in here in the studio, and then it flooded out the hallway and part of the night bird room, which is also a playroom, and about a quarter of the living room, and it made its way into the kitchen. So we're doing this video a little under duress, right, Cecil? And the birds had a couple of days where they didn't get out of their cages because it wasn't really safe for them to do that. There was all kinds of blowers and dehumidifiers, and Peaches, get over here. No, don't start. Don't start now. You're not going to get crazy on me today, are you? Yeah, they're all a little out of sorts. So, right, Cecil? Are you out of sorts? Yes, I'm out of sorts, Dad. So, number of different things. We're just kind of run down the list here. Size. It's not the size of a cage, obviously. If you've ever seen the video by Nature called Parrot Confidential, you know the size for a macaw is about 40 miles by 40 miles. That would be the perfect kind of an environment for a macaw. So, obviously we can't do that, but If we're going to have them in our homes, we have to find a cage that's large enough for them. So the first thing, several things to consider, but the first thing is wingspan. So you really want something that's at least double their wingspan, so they can flap their wings forward and back, so that they can flap their wings without obstruction. And you don't want them beating their wings against something inside their cage either, so perch position is going to matter there as well. So you want something that's at least double the length of their wings. So with these guys, with these umbrellas, we like to have a 4-foot cage. They need a lot of room to move around in. Lorelei, who wouldn't come in today, she'll pace up and down on that. One of her perches in her cage, she'll pace back and forth. And if she had a shorter position to pace, she would probably start getting upset. They need to be able to move around. And if you can kind of imagine what it would be like for you if you were put into a closet and you only had little ways to move, after a while, it would probably drive you kind of batty. And that's where we get the phrase cooped up in English, being cooped up. If you're in too small of an area, you're not going to be happy. And these guys, let's face it, they should be flying in the sky and hanging out in tops of trees. So the idea that they're confined to a small area is not good for them. So largest cage you can get that's at least double their wingspan. So can I see your wings here? Will you open them for me? Will you open them? Come on, Cecil, you can do it. Let's see those wings. Open the wings. Let's get your wings out. Come on. Let's do it. Cecil bird. Yay! Cecil! Open the wings. You're not going to open your wings for me? You won't? I don't want to force him while we've got the cameras in here. But there's one wing. So if you imagine that on both sides, about double that's going to be about 3.5 feet. Bare minimum. So you really want to make sure you do that. Now there are some parrots that like Coco. You're not going to start now, are you? Coco. Yes, I know there's cameras in there. I know that's your alarm. I know, baby. Some parrots actually like smaller cages. And Coco. A good example are African greys. The Congo African greys, although they're not exactly a small parrot. Coco girl. They're not exactly a small parrot. They seem to do better in the smaller cages. It seems to be a species preference to be enclosed like that when in captivity. These ones, the bigger the cage, the happier they seem to be. Most of them. Always keep in mind, though, that... Hi, baby. That each bird is a study of wings. Coco. Come on, sweetheart. Hi, Chloe. Hi, Chloe. Hi, Chloe bird. We hope you will consider supporting us on Patreon today. This is how it works. We produce up to 2 videos a month. As a patron, you pledge to give us a donation, whatever you feel is right and meets your budget. Patreon gives us your gift monthly. You can easily set a limit on how much you donate a month. You can change the amount of your pledge at any time. Your gift will allow us to continue bringing you entertaining and informative videos. Patreon.com/Chloe Sanctuary. We look forward to your participation in Cockatooed. There are some types of cages that just aren't recommended. Corner cages generally don't work. One exception would be African greys. Some African greys don't have a problem with them, but there's not a lot of room in a corner cage. It limits mobility, limits movement. By the time you get your perches in there and your toys in there, there's not too much room for wing flapping, so corner cages aren't a good thing. And in general, round cages are not a good thing either. The problem with a round cage is since it gives a panoramic view, it means that the bird can turn around and see predators coming from all directions. Where if you've got a flat cage and it's up against the wall, that's at least one squared off area where a predator can't get through. Right, Coco?
Cecil, bird. Hi, Cecil. Hi, Cecil. My Cecil boy. My Cecil boy. My Cecil bird. Good boy. He's a good bird.
Now, other considerations are most importantly the spacing between the bars. Now, if the spacing is too far apart, a bird could push its head through there, break its neck, or get stuck and panic and have a heart attack. So something you have to consider is the bar spacing, and there are charts for that as well. Keeping in mind that sometimes birds are not quite as large as you would expect in a species. Cause, for example, she's only 420 grams and she's an umbrella. That's about 100 grams smaller than you'd expect. And her head's a little smaller than the average umbrella. So you just make sure that they can't get their heads stuck or through those bars. And the charts will pretty much help you with that. And bars too come in different thicknesses. So everything from 1/4 inch, or the really thin bars they use for some of these smaller birds, but I never recommend anything less than 1/4 inch. But 5/16, which is the next size up, and then 3/8. If one of these days we'll go to the metric system, which makes so much more sense, because you could say, 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter, 14 millimeter, it's pretty obvious you're stepping up. But when you start talking about 1/4 inch, 5/16, it just, these are silly ways to describe measurements, and even the English don't use the English measurement system. Right, Coco?
Right, Coco? What you doing? What you doing down there? You want something to play with? Want something to play with, big boy?
You got wood? Oh, you're holding the wood? Oh, okay. Now, if you're going to go with, if you got a cage that's got a 1/4 inch bar on it, and you go to put a perch in there that's a single perch that's maybe a foot long, and you're going to hang it up on a 1/4 inch bar, a 1/4 inch wire, it's going to bend the wire a little bit, and it's not going to be steady. So, 5/16, I think, really is a minimum for most birds, and 3/8 is much more, would be much more stable. But you don't want that wire to be stressed when you're putting a perch on it. It's not quite so bad when you're running a perch all the way across the cage, but when you're putting a single perch up, if those wires aren't strong enough, you're going to be unhappy with the cage that you bought if you do that. So you want something that's 5/16 or better as far as thickness. What are you doing over there, Peach? Peaches, come here. Come on, Peaches. Seesaw, be calm, Seesaw, be calm.
Little Cecil bird. Little Cecil bird.
And you basically have two choices when it comes to the coating or lack thereof on the bars of a cage. You've got powder coated. You don't want anything painted ever. Powder coated, which is like a ceramic in a way. It's kind of like a ceramic coating on the cage. And stainless steel. Obviously the best choice is stainless steel. If you can go with it, you're talking a lot of bucks for stainless steel, though. It's not cheap. A cage that may cost you $1,000 powder coated would probably cost you $3,000 or more. If it's stainless. Ages ago, if you went back 10 years ago, which is an age to me, there were some problems with the coating. It had zinc in it sometimes, and especially on the white cages. And there was some concern that birds were actually ingesting some of that material. It's rare for a bird to actually chew and be able to chew off that coating on a cage, so it isn't really as big a concern as it was made out to be. But nonetheless, most of these cages, which now are made in China, there's very little made in the United States, if any. I can't think of the manufacturer right now that's still making them here. They're made in China to American specifications, and since everybody's concerned about zinc, you won't find zinc in most of this powder coating. There were some companies which had a bad reputation for having zinc in their coating, but even they have stepped into line. So it's always nice to have a veterinarian seal of approval saying that these are safe cages, but it's not as big a concern as it used to be. And there was a concern that heavy metals or metal ingestion by birds was causing feather plucking, but that's a rare condition. Generally, feather plucking is a behavioral issue that relates back to not being raised by their parents, being raised in an incubator and raised by humans, and not getting some of the steps in their development that they need in order to be a normal bird, right, Coco? Like one that doesn't scream at tripods and cameras. Our episode 14 is an interview with Dr. Jenkins of the Avian and Exotic Animal Hospital in San Diego. He's been doing this for over 30 years, and he's been treating birds with feather-destructive behavior for at least 10 years, at least a decade. Effectively, we describe his protocol. He describes his protocol in episode 14, so you can get more there. But in most cases, that's not going to be from heavy metal ingestion. As far as metals, Dr. Young in San Marcos at Discovery Valley Animal Hospital said that while he was working at the zoo, the only time they ever saw any side effects from metal ingestion was when a bird had actually swallowed a large piece of metal, and it was in their gut. So.
If you are enjoying our videos, we hope that you can find it in your heart to support our work. It costs between $25,000 to $30,000 a year to care for our flock of heartbroken and abused birds. Most of our birds came with feather-destructive disorder. Even a basic exam with blood work costs $300. Medical emergencies cost us thousands a year. We are a non-profit, and donations are tax-deductible to the full extent of the law. We need your support. Birds deserve a happy and healthy life. Become our patron at www.patreon.com/Chloe Sanctuary to support us on a per-video basis, or donate at our webpage today.
Now, the tops of a cage, you can have a flat surface, or you could have one that's dome-shaped, or you can have one that's like the European ones by King's Cage. It sweeps up, and then it goes up a little bit, and then it comes back down. It sweeps like this, okay? The advantage of having a cage that does not have a flat top is that a bird doesn't have a launch pad to run at you. If they become cage territorial, some birds will actually run across their cage to get to you, to protect their cages. We actually had that with Salamander when he first came here. If he got on top of the cage, and it was his cage primarily, and it has a flat surface, he'd run across to the next cage which had a flat surface and run across and go to attack his former owner. So it's better to have the top of the cage that has a play gym on it or something where it's domed, or it has some area where they won't get a flat surface to run on in case they become territorial. I actually read something on the web where they were talking about territoriality and dominance. There is no dominance in parrots. They don't have a hierarchy, no pecking order, so that's not going to be an issue. But they can become territorial with their cage, just like you might not want people walking into your house. You don't want them just opening the door and walking in. They have. They also, they have a sense of what's theirs, like we do. So, if you don't think so, try to take something out of a bird's beak. It's easier to take it out of their feet if they're holding it than it is to take it out of their beak. Right, Cecil? Yeah, you show him. You show him. See, I grabbed it and he immediately tamped down on it because it's his while he's holding it. So, other considerations is how big is the door? You don't want a cage. You don't want a cage. I'm going to keep covering her head because she doesn't like the tripods. So you want to make sure that there's plenty of access to get in to get your bird. You don't want to have to squeeze through a door. And I've noticed that some of the cages that some manufacturers have small doors. You don't want that. You want a big door. A lot of room to reach in so that if you need to clean the cage, you can get in there to clean it. When you go to get to your bird, to change perches and that kind of thing, it's not a problem. Right? So cage doors, as are the different doors that you have where you put your food. You want access so you can do that from the outside. You can imagine what it would be like if you were in a sanctuary situation like here, and you had to actually reach inside every cage to get a bowl to take it out. It would be a big problem. Feeding doors are important, and you want them. There are two things. They have to be easy to open and easy to close, and also not so easy to open from the inside. Okay, some cage doors, like King's cage, has a special lock they manufactured. It actually goes into three different positions. You have the down position where you can take the door out. I like to talk with my hands. I'm not Italian, but if I uncover your eyes, you just set off that alarm call, kid. Why is that? Because there's cameras up? Is that why? So what Bob does is he moves it. He can reach in and he can reach out enough to get it into the second position, okay? And that's as far as he can reach. And the way that it's designed, they can't use their foot to get it up to that third position. But then what he does is he goes to the other side of the little food door and he jimmies it up. And there's little posts that it sits on. So he jimmies it up to the point where he can then slide the whole door out. So on his cage, he's got chains across there. And otherwise he would be, when he's done with his food, he would just pop the door up. Wet food would go flying everywhere. He figured that out pretty fast. He didn't always do it, but it was often enough that I came up with the chain across the door too. So if the manufacturer tells you that the door is safe, that they can't possibly open it, you can take that with a grain of salt, okay? Now there is one, we got a cage someone donated to us, and it has an unusual latch, and in that you basically turn the thumb knob outside, and then you slide, and you open the door. Well, if you look inside, there's nothing for them to get a hold of. It's all inside of there's a piece of metal tubing, it's actually square, that comes in, that this piece goes into, that locks it. And there's no way they can reach that. That's the best door I've ever seen as far as the actual latch making it so a bird can't open it. I don't think Bob could open it. I wouldn't put him in that cage, though. That happens to be the one that Peaches likes. So she doesn't particularly like people in her cage, do you, baby? So the other thing, too, you'll see with some doors, and that'll be for, the front door, and also sometimes for the actual food doors, they'll have little pieces of metal that there's a bolt that goes through the cage or into the cage, and these little pieces of metal hang down over the door. Don't try to do that, because if you do that, you'll end up biting me. You will. You won't mean to, but you will. Yeah, you silly. You're a big silly bird. You're a big silly bird. Cecil bird. So those work pretty well. He knows how to get through those. He swings them, and once he gets the other lock on the door open, then he'll swing it. He'll take his foot and swing it, and it finally gets loose and push the door open. He knows how to do that. So some of them can do that too. But in most cases, 9 out of 10, probably maybe 1 out of 20 can actually open that way. But they're all smart enough to figure it out if they really want to, right, Coco? I don't want you starting to get down where you're going to cry. I don't. So that's a big consideration. That's a consideration, how the doors close and lock, and how easy they are to get into. The bowls in a cage should be stainless steel. Ceramics can break, and the coated ones, the coating can wear off. Stainless steel works best. So you get a cage that actually comes with a stainless steel. That's a good thing. It's always a good idea to have extras, so that if you're changing them out, let's say you're going to change the water. Let's say you're going to change the water. Then you can put the new water in and take the old one out all in one motion, and you're done, and you just throw it in the sink and get ready to wash it for the next change. So having 1 or 2 extras for your cages is a good idea. I would go with 2 in case something happens. You never know, the bird might run off with one of the bowls and hide it on you. That's happened. It's actually happened here. A bird did that. So you never know what these little guys are going to do, but they're smart, so anything could happen. Right, kid? I don't know. There's cameras in the room. Yeah. Right, Cecil? Right, Cecil bird? So doors are a consideration. Then when you talk to the grates down below, they should come out easily. And if you're using the method we have in our video 36, where you're using a little tiny mop with an extended handle and poop off to clean the bottom, and once a month, whoops, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Once, that Italian hand motion gets you once in a while, doesn't it, kid? Once a month, you're going to have to pull out the grates and clean underneath them. If you're just wiping the tops off with a sponge or something, then you're going to have to do that. You have to pull the grate once a week or so. Calm down, boy. Calm down, sweetie. You're getting too wound up. Baby bird. It's a baby bird. It's a baby bird. That's a good boy. That's a good boy. Look at him go. That's a good bird. That's a good boy. You're getting a little wound up, but you're okay. Right, Chloe? Now, you're not going to get... You can sit down there, but you're not going to get with him, kid. Yep. This is not a bordello. Right? You think it is, though, don't you, Cecil? You think it is. So you want the grates them to be able to come out easily, and to be easy to clean. So again, the size of the door reaching in is important, because if you have a small door, you're going to be getting one arm in there going, and that's no fun. I remember when I was taking anthropology years ago, we were studying the way humans used to be. It really hasn't changed all that much. Cave dwellers used to throw their trash about 10 yards behind where they were living. So that's not very far. Anyone's familiar with a football field knows that 10 yards isn't that far. So, in other words, we have a tendency to do what's easy to do, and if it's a little, the more difficult something is, the less chance we're going to do it. So you want to make sure the cage is good for that. That you get a good cage that has a nice wide open door so you can get to those grates and clean them, and that they come out easy and go back easy, so it's not an issue with cleaning. Example, her cage. She loves her cage, but to get to her bars, and she has a corner cage, but she can't get around because of her neck, and it works just fine. She needs a smaller space, but because of her neck. But when you go to take the grates out of her cage, you have to pull the cage away from the wall. Or in this case, she's next to Cecil's cage. You have to pull her cage out and on its wheels, and then pull out the grate. Now that's something too. Wheels on these cages are known to break. They don't use the best wheels in the world, and if you're going to be moving a cage around a lot, you're asking to have the wheels break on you. So I don't know of any cage that has good wheels. I like the King's cages, but their wheels, if you look at them, the way they're kicked to an angle, I've already had several of them break on me. So the best kind of wheels they could have would be the kind that came with a metal plate and attached below, and the wheel comes straight down, or the bar comes straight down into the wheel. But nobody has those that I know of. That's what I do when a cage breaks and I need to put another wheel on it. I buy those from Harbor Freight and then find a way to attach them underneath. So if you could find a cage that has good wheels, then you're okay. But the main thing is don't move them around too much. Because if you do, you're going to be watching the wheels break. Right? Now you're going to be putting perches in there. You're going to want some different size perches. Row perches are good. Dr. Jenkins suggests putting brackets in, and they make these specifically for the birds' cages, or you can get the kind of brackets you can get at Home Depot where you drop in studs, and then you can just cut a piece of 2x4 and drop it in there. And Dr. Jenkins likes those because the birds chew them up to fit their feet, and they do. As soon as you put one in, they start chewing it and making it just the way they like it. And then over time it changes. Hi, sweetheart. Hi, baby. You got a second verse to that? Aw, good girl. That's a good girl, Peaches. Aw, thank you, sweetie. Oh, what a loving bird. Oh, what a loving bird. That's a good girl. That's a good girl. Yes, it is. What do you say, Chloe? Yeah, that's my girl. You okay over there, Salamander? Yeah, there's a lot of different opinions on this. Some people think you should use natural wood. Of course, you have to make sure it's clean. Natural wood that has different diameters going up and down so that the bird's not standing in the same place. So the bird's not holding on to something that has exactly the same diameter all the time. As in Fast Food 6, you can see how a bird can get calluses, keeping the pressure on their feet at the same point all the time. Right, Salamander? Right, Salamander? So that's... Rope perches are good. They do have the same diameter, but since they're rope, there is some variation, and they're softer on their feet, so that works pretty well. If you have a couple of different diameter ones, like inch diameter, inch and a quarter, 7/8, different diameters, that's good. You want to have at least one perch that they can run a long distance on, and then you may have some other perches going a different way across the cage, so One at the very top of the cage is nice, that's just attached to the bars. Again, you got to have stronger bars to do that. That comes in handy. You also are going to have to, when you put your toys in there, you want something you can dangle them from. I love the 507 King's cage. It's a 4 by 3 by 6.5 foot cage. It's a nice cage, and it has a scalloped top that I like. The only issue with that is that it has 2 places to attach toys, and if you go to hang them on the bars, you're very limited as to where you can put your toys. But there's ways around that. I mean, you can use tie wire to attach something up there so that you can put a toy in a different position. There's ways around it. So, what are you doing, silly? Well, what are you doing? Oh, you're not going to go over there and do that. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. No, you don't want to do that. Oh. No, they're going to eat the cameras. Cecil, calm down, silly. You big silly bird. You big silly. Yeah. Hey, you. What are you doing whacking me with that thing? What are you doing whacking me with that thing? What? Coco, are you okay down there? You're calming down a bit. Oh, now, don't get all wound up. Just because the camera's up. I know. Now, there are ways I'm going to have to get over here because I got to try to calm her down. Cover her head or something. Now, you have to finagle a little bit the doors on the cages, and sometimes you have to put an extra chain like with Bob, or you have to put something to lock a door down. As you can see here, there are different ways to do these things. Right, Salamander? Well, let's talk about cages. Now, this is just specific situations. Now, it's best to have a cage in a corner, but not a corner cage. The reason being that if you have a cage in the corner, 2 sides are blocked up. Unless, of course, there's a window there, and at which point you should have the window at least partially blocked off. Now, the reason for this is because they're looking for predators all the time. They're prey animals, so they're looking for predators in their environment. If they have 2 walls blocked off, that's 2 places they can feel sure about. There's no predator coming through that wall, and they'll ignore it. Right? Right, Salamander? Do you think so, Salamander? Coco? Hey, hey, hey. Gentle, gentle. Hey, now you stop trying to hit him with the toy. Get over here, right there, and just be calm. You're all wound up. No, don't be wound up with the toy on my face. Get back down here because I don't want you messing with him, okay? No. Cecil, calm down. That's a better Cecil. All right. So, he's in a corner. He likes it. But he needs to make sure that he can see out of that cage. If you block it off for any reason, for example, Cecil's cage is next to his, and at one point Cecil was getting a little bit too pushy, staring him down from the cage, and he looked nervous, so I put up a piece of wood, just a 1/4-inch piece of plywood between the 2 cages, and he went ballistic. Salamander just couldn't handle that. And it really came down to the fact that he couldn't see. And because he couldn't see me walking through the hallway or walking through the main bird room into the kitchen, it bugged him. I only did that for a day, and I took it out, and he was fine again. But I knew he was upset because he was making his crying sounds. Right? You make your crying sounds? Did you? Yes, you did. Mm-hmm. And he likes to chew up paper and that kind of thing, so he gets paper on his bars to chew up, and then you have to pull that out during the day because he'll poop from a perch. Coco, I'm not taking the cameras down right now. He'll poop from a perch and it'll get on the paper. You don't want that right get into it. He's pretty good about avoiding it, but still, it's best not to have that. So you need to make sure you check that kind of thing in a cage. Right? You agree? Oh, you do agree with me. Cecil doesn't agree with me today, but you do? No, you're not going to mess with him. No. I ain't going to do that. Cecil, you're kind of wild today. You're kind of wild. You don't like those cameras either, do you? You just react to it differently than Coco does. Now with Cecil, now he's one of these, you think that you've got a strong cage that a bird can't tear apart. This guy, 20 minutes in Bob's cage. I put him in there so we could be in a bigger cage because we just don't have a cage that I would really like for him. I would like him in a 4-foot by 3-foot cage, bare minimum. But the key with him is he's got to go in a cage that there's two kinds of welds, okay? There's a tack weld, where basically they're just taking a wire and tacking it to another wire with a weld. And there's a bead weld where they lay in some metal between the two wires, okay? If you put him in a cage that's tack welded, he'll tear it apart. In fact, somebody made a comment on YouTube that you have a bird in a round cage? Yeah, I do. His sleeping cage is a round cage. It's bead welded. And he still broke one of the welds apart. Didn't you? And so I used tie wire and some other things to try to cinch it back down, and he hasn't broken another one off. But he found the weakest bar and broke it. So that's another consideration. You may not realize that you may have a bird that can actually be an escape artist like this guy. As in this picture of the cage that I had him in originally, which he tore to shreds, and I had to bolt wood behind it, and I used metal perforated metal tape, and then bolts to keep him from tearing it apart. He's something else. So you may end up with a bird that you get him a nice cage and they tear it apart. Even one as nice as the King Cage 507. You put him in there, he'll tear all the bars off of it. Well, maybe he'll come out and stop tearing the bars apart. I don't know. He popped 2 bars on Bob's cage in 20 minutes. So now, ultimately, with someone like this guy, I'd like to get him a stainless steel cage and have it welded at every joint with a bead weld. I can imagine how much that would cost. The cage is about $3,000 something, and then you get a welder out to do every single one of those junctions. You're probably talking another $500 to have that done. I don't know how much a mobile welder would charge for that. Right? Like, Chloe got to choose her cage, but I wouldn't do that today because of the chance of disease inside of a bird store. I wouldn't go to a bird store to buy cages, so I wouldn't do that. So you're kind of in a situation where you order something, you get it, and you hope it works. Now with him, if I'd ordered him that 507 King's cage and he'd started taking it apart, I would have had to put a different bird in there and just put him into a smaller cage. Because he's not going to make it in one of them. Now, anything that's tack welded is just wide open. So, if you know you're getting a bird and the bird has a history of breaking cages apart, you're going to need to get something that's bead welded. And that may be a good example of that if you can find an old California cage. Those were bead welded. Until whatever company came along and bought them and started making something besides cages. They were the best cages, though. Right now, I think King's cages are great, too, but not for Cecil. Not for Cecil the bird. Right? And they do get attached to their cages, so Cecil, calm down, sweetie. They get attached to their cages, so if you make a shift, they may not like it. Roman went from a corner cage that he was in when we got him which they loaned us for a while. We ended up giving him the cage back and got him into one of the 4 by 3 by 6.5 foot cages. He loves that cage. But if he sees a cage like Peaches, which is similar to his old cage, he'll go in there and play because he remembers what they're like. And he lived in one before, so if you forget to close that cage and he's loose in the main bird room, he'll go in there and start taking over her cage. Right? Right, sweetie? Now, some cages come with a tray on the top to catch poop when they're on their play area. Or if another bird is sitting on top of the cage. That reduces the light in the cage, and most birds don't like that, right? You don't like that, do you? No, you see, that was one part of his problem when I had the board up between his cage and Cecil's, was that it reduced the amount of light he was getting, and I'm pretty sure that was part of his problem. And just not being able to see me walk through the room was the other part, right, kid? I'll never know for sure, but so 9 times out of 10, you don't want to have that up there. Unless it becomes a real problem, you have other birds and some birds sitting up there and pooping in their water, or you can't, some issue pops up. You may put it up there, but in most cases, that second tray at the top of the cage is not something the birds are going to want. Because it's going to be too dark in their cage, right, Coco? Right, Coco Bird? What do you say, Salamander? What are you doing? Well, you're going to take off and fly. What are you going to do? What are you doing, Cecil? I like that toy, huh? I like that toy. Right there. I gotta cover her face so I can talk. Now, seed guards are something too that. Where are you going, sweetie? Come here. Come here. Seed guards are something I don't use, and cages. Some cages come with those integrated. Like it's built into the cage. I don't think they do much. The birds that are going to throw their pellets, and there are some birds that will do that. She does it sometimes, don't you, Peach? I'm talking about you. Yes, I am. They're going to throw them farther than the seed guard is going to protect. So what a seed guard does is it takes up a lot of extra room, and I've not known it to do much in the way of actually keeping the area underneath the cage clean. Some people say that it works for them, but it's never worked for me. And I don't know anyone who's had parrots for any length of time that still uses a seed guard. I'm sure they're out there. I just don't know any of them. Now, some cages you have exposed bolts. It's a bolt that goes in, and there's no nut on the other side. It goes into the metal, and then the nut is built into. Coco, come here. You're so noisy. Come here. Oh, I'm beautiful. I know. So on the cages that have the bolt that go through there, if there's an exposed bolt head. Not a like a hex head. These guys can unscrew those. So you may walk through the room and notice that there's a bolt on the floor. So be aware of that. You may need to double check to make sure they're not taking the cages apart. There are solutions to that. There are things that you can cover the bolts with. For example, I have some forming plastic that you can put in boiling water, and then you take the plastic out and it's soft, and you can actually mold that over the head and around to the back of around the bars. And then what happens is, they're going to hit this plastic before they can get to the bolt head. Not that they can't tear the plastic off, they eventually can, and you can just do it again. If you can get the pieces of the plastic and throw it back into hot water and... Right, Coco? Right, Coco Bird? And why is that open again? Okay. Is there anything else I've forgotten? Oh, yeah. Now we went through cleaning in episode 36, but basically you're going to use poop off to clean the bars, and you can use it anywhere inside the cage to clean it. Clean the perches, clean the food bowl holders, and you can even do that with the birds in there. It's not going to hurt them. Hi, Peach. You're going to lay paper in the bottom of the cage. Now, this is something, when you're looking at the bottom tray, a lot of manufacturers are smart enough to make the tray about the same size width as a newspaper. So it's really easy to just drop the newspaper in there. In other cages, like the one that Peaches is in, I put one section of paper in there normally, and then I have folded pieces of newspaper that go this way and that. And the reason I use newspaper... What are you doing up there, sweetheart? Hi, baby. Hi, big boy. Hi, cutie. That's a good bird. That's a good bird. The reason I use newspaper is because when they poop on it, you can see whether their poop is normal or not. And that's important to know, because that's how you tell it's one of the ways you tell if they're healthy is their poop normal? Does it have all three elements? Is there enough volume of it? Are they having a normal volume of poop? And the other thing is that the soy ink that they use for newspaper is antibiotic in its nature, so it helps to keep the bacteria down. You don't want to use anything in there that's like corn cob or that's junk. You shouldn't use it. What happens there is that these guys don't have much bacteria in their poop at all, but it attracts bacteria once it's out of their body. So if you put corn cob down there, you think, I don't have to change it for a couple of days. You're growing bacteria, mold, and who knows what down there. So you don't want to do that. So newspaper is the way to go. So when you're buying a cage, if you can look and see if a piece of newspaper will fit in there, you won't have to modify it. What are you doing over there? Leave that alone, sweetheart. Leave it alone. Salamander. Come here, boy. That's a good bird. What are you doing, Peach? You singing? You singing? You singing? Yeah? So if we were going to buy a new cage, we're generally going to buy the King's cages. We've had good luck with them, except with Cecil, of course. King's cages, because they're tack welded like almost everybody else, they're not going to work very well. Do we have? Thank you. I could use a little bit of this. Since somebody decided to poop over here, that must have been Salamander, because the other guys wouldn't have done that. He has a twisted pelvis, and he doesn't have as much control over his bowels as the other birds do. So a quick recap. You want to get the right size cage. Minimum for a bird is at least twice its wingspan, so they can flap their wings without a problem. You're going to want to you need to make sure that the bar spacing isn't too big, so they don't get their heads through it and stuck. They can either break their necks or have a heart attack in that condition. You want you want a cage door that's big enough so that you can get in and out of there without a problem, as far as cleaning and inserting perches and that kind of thing. You have to choose between powder coated and stainless steel. It's 1630. And powder coated and powder coated and stainless steel. And stainless steel is better if you can afford it. The top of a cage, if it's flat, the bird could become territorial and defend its cage. If it's irregular, If it's either domed or it has like the 507 Kings comes up like this. It does have a little bit of a flat spot up here, but that's way high, and then they have to kind of crawl down. That limits the territorial behavior a little bit. The bar size, if it's too thin, it's hard to put a perch up there. A freestanding perch that only hooks to one side of the cage may not work. Especially the heavier types of perches. If you have a piece of manzanita or something, which again, that's not the best kind of perch because they can't really chew manzanita. They can take the bark off of it. That's about all. You want to be able to you want to have enough room getting through the door so you can get to the grates. The grates should come out easily to be cleaned. You should clean them once a week. If you're not using something like a mop with poop off on it, it's going to get dirty on the underside of that cage and be a potential disease risk. I found that once a month works fine if you're using a mop like the one I've shown in episode 36. Otherwise, once a week is pretty much critical. Besides, if you only have one bird, you could probably do it every other day and it wouldn't be that big of a deal to pull it out and clean it. But when you have 24 of them to pull, like we do here, the night cages and the day cages together, you won't be doing that every other day. So what we do is rotate. We just go from cage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to the last cage and start over again on the bars. So, the other thing I mentioned on the bars, you want a lot of room between where the paper is and the bars. So if you have that much space between the bars and the paper, that's great. If you got this much space, these guys have go-go gadget arms, they reach down through there, grab the paper and pull it up. So that buffer space needs to be there. Now if you get a cage that has only that much distance, they're going to be pulling that paper up. Not every bird will, but this guy still manages to do that with that much space. If somehow he gets a hold of that paper once in a while and starts dragging it up, don't you? With him, all you got to do is throw like a couple of pieces of paper in there for him to play with, and he'll stop that behavior. But right?
Right, Cecil bird. Right, Cecil bird. He's a good bird. He's such a good Cecil.
Remember not to move the cages around too much because the wheels are one of the weakest points. Keep an eye for the bolts falling on the floor. When you're picking a cage, make sure that you know that the doors, if the doors aren't going to be that secure, you're going to have to run chains across there, and we'll show you how to do that. You're going to have to run chains or something else across them. And you should have several different perches in there of different sizes. Rope perches are good, and 2x4s held by brackets on each end, something that you can just lift it out, put a new one in when the time comes. That works good. Different sizes and something they can whittle down themselves, like the 2x4s. I think that's about it. And who wants to say goodbye? You want to say goodbye to the people? Come here. Come on. Let's say goodbye to the people. You want to say goodbye? Salamander, you going to? You say goodbye. There you go. There you go. Yeah, we lived through the flood, didn't we? We lived through the flood. Thank you so much for watching Cockatoo 37. And we'll see you next time.
We welcome your feedback on our videos. We look forward to your insights, tips, questions, stories, and pictures. You can email us at cockatoo@chloesanctuary.org, reach us on Twitter @Chloe Sanctuary, and join with us on our Facebook Chloe Sanctuary page.
your science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Killing you by leaving the room. Xander, no one is killing you. Well, maybe Chloe will, but no one's killing you yet. They're not. Chloe, open wide.